Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the debrief for the 2018 Brazilian Grand Prix. And wow, what a race that was. In fact, no, scrap that. What a weekend that was. On the whole, for me, that has got to be up there as one of the best races of the season. As always, I'll be going over some of the key talking points shortly, but first up, let's have a look at the final race result. It was Lewis Hamilton who took victory for Mercedes, and that sealed the Constructors' Championship for the Silver Arrows, which I will talk about in just a moment. Max Verstappen came home in second place after leading for so long, ended up 1.4 seconds off the pace. Yes, I will be talking about that as well a little bit later in the video. And Kimi Raikkonen rounded off the podium, 4.7 seconds off the lead. In fact, with Daniel Ricciardo in fourth, there was just 5.1 seconds separating the top four. Valtteri Bottas came home a distant fifth with Sebastian Vettel in sixth, both of them making two stops versus a top four's one stop. Charles Leclerc, brilliant drive once again to come home in seventh, and best of the rest for Sauber, some big points for them. And some solid points as well for Haas, Romain Grosjean in eighth and Kevin Magnussen in ninth place. And it was Sergio Perez who took the final point for Force India in 10th. It was Brendan Hartley top of the next page in 11th place for Toro Rosso with Carlos Sainz in 12th. Pierre Gasly from 9th on the grid only managed to finish in 13th place, and Esteban Ocon was in 14th. Post-race, Stoffel van Dorn was demoted to 15th place. I will go over that a little bit later in the video as well. It was Sergei Sirotkin in 16th for Williams, Fernando Alonso in 17th, and Lance Stroll finished the race in 18th place. And your retirements list was Nico Hülkenberg and Marcus Ericsson. We will get to that in just a moment, but first off, a word on Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. The Brit did take the checkered flag and won the race, as you saw there, and yes, he did get a big slice of luck thanks to the incident between Max Verstappen and Esteban Ocon. But as I've said before about the luck falling his way this season thing, and with other drivers as well to be fair, at the end of the day you have got to put yourself in that position in the first place to be able to capitalise on that luck. His pace wasn't brilliant in comparison to the Red Bulls early in the race, but he was also struggling with tyre blistering, which very much compromised that pace as well. And Mercedes were also concerned that the Brit was on the brink of a power unit failure during the race, and so were actually having to turn things down. In fact, at one point the team were even told that his engine would fail that very next lap. So although nothing should be taken away from Red Bull for their pace, I think that does kind of explain why Mercedes were a bit off the pace on Sunday. And yeah, of course Lewis Hamilton wants to win every Grand Prix he competes in, every driver does. But given those problems, had he actually ended up finishing second place, I still think that that would have been a solid result. Ultimately though, despite his issues, his win was enough to seal a fifth consecutive Constructors' Championship for Mercedes, and I believe that's even without Valtteri Bottas' points for fifth place. It's a hell of an achievement from the Silver Arrows, and thoroughly deserved as well. This season they may not have had the fastest car over the course of the whole season, but I've always maintained that they've had the best overall package, and that includes the car, the drivers and the team as a whole. And of course next season now they've got the chance to go out and try and match that record set by Ferrari back in 2004, and that is obviously for 6 consecutive titles. We did discuss it briefly last night, I think it's going to be a bit of a tall order if Ferrari do develop well over the winter and Red Bull really are in the mix next season, but that can all wait. Massive congratulations to the Silver Arrows. But on to probably the biggest talking point of the day then, and that is the on and off track altercations between Max Verstappen and Esteban Ocon. Now myself and Chainbear had our say on this during last night's livestream, which you can watch by clicking the I in the top right of the screen, or indeed on the end screen. It all started on the track when Esteban Ocon was attempting to unlap himself, which he is perfectly entitled to do, and that was on the run down to the first corner. However, Max Verstappen fought back and repassed Ocon through turn 1, and as he went to take the second part of the Senna S, the two collided. That left both drivers in a spin, damaged Verstappen's floor and saw him lose the lead and more than likely the race win. He very much had it in the bag at that point. The stewards investigated it and handed Ocon a 10-second stop-go penalty for the incident. And as I'm sure you're all fully aware, this has led to a lot of debate as to who was at fault. And as I say, we gave a more comprehensive, if you like, view on the incident last night. But I will give my brief take on it now. Well, I'll at least try and keep it brief anyway. I've watched it back this morning, and that does include the footage released by F1 today that shows the full end to the lap, but my opinion has not changed. Yes, Ocon is much quicker than Verstappen down that straight. Yes, he has every right to unlap himself if he is quicker than that lead car, and yes, absolutely Max could have left him more space on the inside. But ultimately, the thing for me is this wasn't for position. Ocon was the lapped car, and from what I've watched, Verstappen had relapped him and it was perfectly reasonable for him to expect Ocon not to try and throw it up the inside into turn 2. For me, completely unnecessary. No, Ocon is not solely to blame. Verstappen could and probably should have left more space. But given that Max would probably have passed Ocon again by turn 4, was it really worth it from the Force India? Yeah, of course he's got his own race to run, but he was 16th at the time. Come on, really? Like I say, given Max would have passed him again, was it really worth it? But then I suppose having said that, and I'm sure some of you will point out the same from the other side, if he was going to pass Ocon again, was it really worth Max taking that risk? I mean, ultimately you guys will make up your own minds. It is very much one of those incidents that is open to individual interpretation. But for me, Ocon is still predominantly to blame for that. He is the lap car in that situation and Verstappen was ahead going into turn 2. But at the same time, Max is not blameless in this either. He could have left more space. It didn't all end there though. After the race, the two came to blows in the Weybridge garage and after a few words were exchanged, Verstappen pushed Ocon multiple times. The stewards decided to look at it and in the end handed Verstappen the equivalent to community service with 2 days of public service, which by the way he must complete within 6 months. I will put a link to an article on Planet F1 which has the full explanation from the FIA. However, the short version is that Verstappen started the altercation, but the stewards accept his explanation that it wasn't his intention to strike Ocon. It was also added that although the FIA do sympathise with his frustration and passion, he has an obligation to act appropriately, and they feel he failed to respect that. Right, I don't condone Verstappen's actions in the slightest, but frankly, the whole thing was just a little bit pathetic, and take that how you want. I get Verstappen's frustration, I really do, and F1 is a passionate sport, so these things will and have happened. Let's be honest about this, a damn sight worse has happened. But it was all just pretty unnecessary and like I say, a little bit pathetic in the end. I feel like I ought to end this though by saying that the two were seen shaking hands in the paddock, and I believe that was after the meeting with the stewards. Look, I'm not going to bang on about it again, as I've already said we covered it last night, and it's done. Ocon was penalised for the on-track incident, Verstappen has been penalised for the off-track incident, they shook each other's hands, it's done. Draw a line under it and move on, and that is certainly what I'm going to be doing. Before I go over a few other talking points though, I do just want to clear something up from last night's stream. I was a bit perplexed, if you like, as to where Vettel's pace had gone during the race. He was under a 10th off pole on Saturday, and I even went as far as to tip him for the win. I thought he had the superior strategy going into that Grand Prix. But he was nowhere during the race, and I think that's what confused me. But it was pointed out in the stream, and I've had a look over it today, and Ferrari have confirmed that it was a sensor issue on his car, which forced Vettel to have to run different settings to those that he would normally use, and in turn that made the car difficult to drive. And I will point out as well that Vettel himself did also add after the race that he was surprised by how well the super soft tyres managed to last, and that the team were not expecting a super soft strategy to be, quote, feasible, but it was actually no problem. So in the end, a very frustrating day for the German. Not so much for his teammate though, Kimi Räikkönen of course, as you saw earlier, getting that podium, and thoroughly deserved as well. And okay, yes, the points lost today can be put down to that technical issue, but I think Ferrari will leave Brazil probably looking at it as a case of what might have been. Let's go over a few other talking points then. First up, it was a really good weekend overall for both Sauber and Haas, with both teams benefiting from the performance of that Ferrari engine. Charles Leclerc drove very well all weekend and thoroughly deserved that 7th place, and it was also a very good weekend for his teammate Marcus Ericsson, well, up until the race at least. He managed a fantastic 7th place in qualifying, which with Ricciardo's penalty left him on the 3rd row of the grid. However, unfortunately, contact with Grosjean on the first lap left the Swede with significant damage, and despite his best efforts to continue, the car was very much undrivable, and after a spin, he pitted to retire. Honestly, a real shame given his performance in qualifying, and just for the record, the contact was just your typical Turn 1 incident, no one really at fault there. But despite that contact, Grosjean still finished ahead of teammate Magnussen, with the two landing the team a very good total of 6 points. That has closed the gap on Renault in the Constructors, but in all honesty, it seems very much like too little too late. Haas are going to need the weekend of all weekends in Abu Dhabi if they are to overhaul Renault's 24-point lead in the battle to be best of the rest. Very unlikely, but Haas should still absolutely be massively proud of the season they've had. On that fight to be best of the rest, but this time in terms of the Drivers' Championship, Nico Hülkenberg continues to lead the way by 11 points over Sergio Perez, and that's despite the German retiring from the race with mechanical issues. Excessive engine temperatures forced Hülkenberg into retirement on lap 32, with the team saying it was a precautionary measure. Teammate Carlos Sainz had a better day, but only managed 12th place in the race. But overall, a very poor weekend for Renault, but they weren't really that confident when they arrived in Brazil anyway. Oh, and I do have to say, by the way, how good was that fight between the two of them on the first lap, side by side and wheel to wheel for about 5 corners. Brilliant. As for the rest of the teams, Force India picked up a point with Sergio Perez, and I've already gone over what happened with Esteban Ocon, so I'm not going to repeat myself on that one again. But it was a weird weekend in my view for Force India. I said it a few times on Sunday, they had okay pace and were sort of on the cusp of the top 10 with that pace. So I guess 10th place is probably about right. Toro Rosso had a mixed day. Brendan Hartley was happy after the race with his performance after making up ground and finishing ahead of his teammate, who had of course started in 9th place. And Pierre Gasly was disappointed and said that the car was struggling compared to those around him. He did get a good start though, to be fair to him, making it up to 8th place, but it only really went backwards from there. And Franz Tost actually stated after the race that the race pace just wasn't there and that it, quote, wasn't a satisfying result for the team. Fernando Alonso and Stoffel Van Dorn were both handed penalties for ignoring blue flags. Alonso got his penalty during the race, but Van Dorn's was handed out after a post-race hearing. It should be noted as well that both drivers also received 2 points on their super licence. It was a solid race from Stoffel, no, not for any points or anything like that, but he fought hard during the Grand Prix and generally raced very well, not afraid to get his elbows out. Ultimately though, as was the case with his teammate and has been the case for a while now, the pace just wasn't there for McLaren. And last up, it's Williams. A really solid weekend for Sergei Sirotkin. He made it out of Q1 in qualifying, of course. Much to his and the team's surprise, well, in all honesty, much to my surprise as well. But the Russian wasn't happy with the race and says that he knew right from the off that it was going to be a tough race. And even said that he struggled to keep the car on track at times, stating, quote, I felt like I was dancing on ice. And Lance Stroll was just pretty much bemoaning the car as well in the end, which, given how poor it is totally understandable. He said that, quote, the bottom line is, we were not quick enough. Kind of says it all. On to my driver of the day then, and Max Verstappen was once again awarded the title by the fans, and I'm going to agree this week. He was the quickest guy out there. Yes, of course, others had their problems, but still. He was the quickest consistently through the race and pulled off some surprising overtakes. And surprising in the sense that I don't think many would have predicted Red Bull overtaking Ferrari and Mercedes in a straight line, even with DRS. Okay, as I've already gone over and I'm not going to repeat again, there were incidents on and off the track that some might say don't put him in a good light, but shoving all of that aside and looking at just his performance on track, it's hard to look beyond him for driver of the day. But as hard as it is to look beyond him, I was a little bit torn, as I said last night. Charles Leclerc was fantastic during the race. He once again kept his head down, drove his race, and thoroughly deserves that 7th place. Kimi Raikkonen was very good as well. Yes, his teammate had problems, but he drove well to get that podium and to fend off Daniel Ricciardo. And Ricciardo is the other driver I was considering. The Aussie was quick, got plenty of overtaking done, and drove very well. 11th to 4th should not be sniffed at. Before I go then, let's have a look at the championship table, starting with the drivers. And Lewis Hamilton, already crowned champion, we know he now has 383 points. Vettel will be taking second, he's on 302 points. Kimi Raikkonen looks good for third, although Valtteri Bottas could have a say on that in Abu Dhabi. That's 251 points for Raikkonen and 237 for Bottas. But Max Verstappen has 234 points. It's just 3 points off Valtteri Bottas in 4th. Could he nick that from the Finn in Abu Dhabi? Daniel Ricciardo stays in 6th place, but did finish the race and did get some points, taking him to 158. Following his retirement, Nico Hülkenberg remains on 69 points, 11 clear of Sergio Perez in that fight for 7th, and it's looking good for the German. Kevin Magnussen has 55 points in 9th, and as I've said the last couple of weeks, somehow Fernando Alonso is still in the top 10 on 50 points. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes are confirmed as champions. They've got 620 points. Ferrari will be finishing in 2nd place. They've got 553. And as we've known for a while, Red Bull will be finishing in 3rd place. They're currently on 392 points. Renault look good for 4th. They've got 114, 24 points clear of Haas in 5th, who have got 90. McLaren are in 6th place. They've got 62, and barring a crazy race in Abu Dhabi, it's looking likely they will stay there as well. Force India 7th on 48, but Sauber are only 6 points behind on 42. And if Ericsson delivers the pace that he showed he's got this weekend and Leclerc also continues to deliver, Sauber could pip Force India to 7th. Toro Rosso remain 9th on 33 points, and Williams continue to prop up the table on just 7 points. That is it then for the Brazilian Grand Prix debrief, and as ever they were just my thoughts and my opinions, but what are yours? What did you reckon to the race? Did you enjoy it as much as I did? What is your take on everything that happened between Verstappen and Ocon? And who was your driver of the day? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now I will be back soon with more content as ever, and don't forget to join us live on Wednesday at 7 PM UK time for the midweek stream. In the meantime, though, you can follow me over on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.